I learned how easy it is to be sucked into a dark place when there's darkness around you and to lose sight of joy and love and laughter. There were also some really dark points where I watched myself get sucked into this world at work where we forget that we're human beings sometimes, and we treat each other in ways that are unkind
Yeah.
and unempathetic, all for the sake of pleasing our investors. I discovered I wouldn't change it because if I hadn't done it, I'd
You
sit
wouldn't
here
be here today.
wondering what could have been.
Yeah.
Could I have made it to the top? Could I have been in the boardroom? And now I know, yeah. And where I am now is in recognizing, okay, I've seen that side and I
Yeah.
don't want it for myself.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. I am really, really excited about this. Guys, it is my honor to welcome our guests. And I usually, when they present, I take the time to honor them because I know they're coming with a couple of things I deem very expensive, their time. 24 hours has been offered to every one of us. What we do with that 24 hours will tell a lot about you. Your sins will be exposed, man. I keep telling you guys. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It has created the individual before us, and we want to honor her and thank her for coming to share with us both of these precious commodities. Kathy, thank you for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's an honor. The question that I ask everyone that comes to this wonderful podcast of ours, and I alluded to the fact that we have two types of journey on this planet. The first is the introduction to self, and then the latter part of our journey, which is the servant part of the journey, the interdependent. My question to you is, how do you serve mankind?
That's a great question. That's a big question. I hope in a few different ways, and I think there's in a particular way we can focus on today. But in my day-to-day life, I try to serve the earth. I try to be conscious of my impact and make it as positive as possible and reduce the negativity of my impact as much as possible. I serve my family first. And I think if I am present and good as I can be, my best version of myself that I can be every day for them, then that will serve the rest of our community in time. And the third is in asking us to take a step back from the way that we interact with each other, particularly in a work environment, and think about what we're trying to achieve, whether or not that is encouraging the best possible outcome in the best possible way, and whether or not we have allowed ourselves to be and act and feel in the work environment in a way that is not acceptable in our personal relationship. And I've observed this in a number of circumstances in which I've worked, and I have to step back and ask myself, why? Why do we think it's okay to treat each other in a work environment in a way that we would not think it was okay to treat each other outside of work? And so I'm hoping to help serve my community and people the globe over by asking business leaders to rethink that and be cognizant of that.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful assignment that you have because of the two locations that we spend the most time is home and work. And for some reason, as you stated, the behavior in both arenas can be different. And to help people, if you will, to bring that in oneness with oneself, with the same way you show up at work. At home is the same way you show up at work. And you have that kindness or that identity to be you in either location. One of our customs there is to go back. We want to go back as to the beginnings of our beginnings. And that is usually the location of the family. The family unit is where we learn much communication skills. We learn how to manage our thoughts and our behaviors and so forth. What was your family unit like?
My family unit was full of love. So I was born into a family with two older sisters and a very loving mother and father. My mother passed away when I was very young, under the age of 3, and my father remarried a few years later to a wonderful stepmom and brought me the gift of another sister. So in that family unit, I grew up with 3 older sisters and mom and dad. And, what I remember about being young is joy and love. And, of course, life wasn't perfect. We all had our
Yeah.
conflicts. We all had our trials and tribulations, but it was centered in a deep love for each other. I remember being the youngest when my mother passed. A lot of family members, and particularly my grandmother, And my father used to call me the sunshine. And, and I think, and when we have trials and tribulations and emotional difficulty, young children are often a source of relief for that.
Yeah.
And especially, I think I was born with a sunny disposition.
Uh-huh.
And therefore, and was at such a young age when my mom passed, not really having a comprehension of that. I think I was able to lighten the mood in what would have often been kind of dark and difficult times. So I kind of was nicknamed with this and thought of as a bit of a sunny character as a young person.
As an individual with the sunny disposition, if you will. And what was your relationship approach, if you will, to those outside the family? How did you manage that?
I always had very strong friendships and relationships outside of the family. And so I think, and I still carry that. I think of myself as a connector. I've always been the more the merrier type, open arms. I am the sort of person that will trust you and whoever you may be first. Yeah. And I wouldn't say that I'm in my personal life naturally skeptical of people. I'm naturally open and trusting, and that's the way I like it. I think I have had times in my life where I have been skeptical, and it has not usually served me well in the long run.
You're going to college, or at least heading in that direction. What field of study did you pick, and why did you pick it?
Well, I was a very lazy teenager. So I struggled to read the fine print in a lot of my studies. And I went to university and sorry, I've lived in London for a long time, so I've changed from calling it college to calling it uni. And so I went off to university having no idea what I wanted to study, but so glad that I had done college level courses of math in high school. So I never had to take another math class, and I was really excited about that. And I took some economics courses, and I really liked economics. And then I just happened, the university that I went to, Wake Forest University, had this really unique program of a joint mathematical economics degree. And when I looked at the course book, I only needed to take 1 or 2 math classes and I could do this mathematical economics degree. And I thought, well, I know I said I'd never take another math class, but it's just 1 or 2. I can do it. I'll do that, and that'll be a strong degree. And I didn't read the fine print. And I didn't realize that if you go down that track, every economics class you take just about is a mathematical class. Yeah. So I failed. And then I did it again in graduate school. I applied to graduate school and I wanted to study international development policy and international development in the broader sense. And I applied to a bunch of schools and I was offered a scholarship from Georgetown's Public Policy Institute. And I didn't read the fine print because if I had, I would have realized that they had offered me a scholarship because their policy program is entirely econometric. So I said again at the end of university, I never have to take another math class. And then I went off to graduate school and had to take a semester of econometrics and statistical analysis every class every semester that I was there. So I'm not going back to school and I'm not taking another math class.
Well, if you do go back, just make sure you read those fine prints.
That's the lesson, to read the fine print.
Yeah, that's it. So you got your degree and you graduated. And usually why I do this linear approach. The linear approach is the program that they tell us that we ought to live by. We get born, of course, we go to church, we go to family, we go to school, we get the job, we get married, you get the white picket fence, the cars, to go on vacation 1 or 2 weeks, and then you have some kids, and then you die. That's the program that they tell us. And so I like walking through the linear approach because life is not a linear approach at all. And so here you are. You've gotten your degree. You didn't read the fine prints, but you made it out. And you're standing there. The tassel is off. You toss it up in the air. And you have your gown. And it's the next day. What did you do?
Well, I probably slept in because I used to love a good party and celebration back in those days. But I tried desperately. I was living in Washington, D.C. when I finished my graduate degree. And I tried desperately to get a job. And I could not for love or money get a job in the field I wanted to work in, which was international development and
Yeah.
public policy. And so I took a job. Again, I find that the degrees, the jobs, they kind of have come to me. I seem to be not very good at looking. It's better if I just sit back and let it come. And so I took a job as an economist working for a company called Global Insight. And I ended up being with that company for 14 years and working with some of the most amazing people I've ever worked with. Wonderful, really a family of people in that organization. And that is how I ended up moving to London, is with
Mhm.
that job. So yeah, a lot of dreams fulfilled in that job.
Being in that job in that type of location and the family feel, which is awesome to have that in a work situation. There's nothing like it. I've had that experience before. While you're there, what did you as an individual being begin to experience and learn in your life?
I think if I look at those years, and it was a long time, it was the time in my life when I gave myself the freedom to figure out who I am,
Hmm.
independent of how I was raised, independent of the community I grew up in. I lived in communities that, were not familiar. As I said, I was in Washington D.C. When I started that job. I moved to London. I spent a lot of time soul searching, processing, figuring stuff out, and trying to learn what I wanted my life to be, what I wanted out of it. I also did a lot of crazy, fun, irresponsible, free things like travel and,
Yeah.
see the world and think not too much about the future. And, so it was a wonderful time. It was a time of really true freedom and exploration.
Let me ask you this question. Let me put it this way. What prompted you to do that? Because a lot of people don't do that, if you will. They're just partying, having a good time and enjoying life and doing the regular stuff that we always do, the programming, we party hard, we drink hard, we work hard, but not many of us seek an understanding of who we are at a deeper level. What prompted you to do that?
Well, I should start by saying I did all of the party hard, drink hard, play hard, work hard stuff too. But I think because I grew up in the Southeast US, certainly in my 20s, the fact that I hadn't had the urge and had in fact kind of resisted the urge to settle down and have a
Hmm.
family and go for the white picket fence and the husband and 2.3 kids,
Yeah.
that made me a bit of an outlier. I started to, when I would go home to Georgia where I grew up, I started getting more and more questions of, when are you going to get married? When are you going to, what do you, and my lovely mom would always respond by saying, "She's too smart to do that when she's young." And so but of course it made me question, well, why don't I want to do those things? And I just didn't feel settled. I just
Hmm.
didn't feel ready to do those. I
Yeah.
wanted to see what else was out there. I wanted to see how the world worked, not just my community and what I knew. And I think I probably on some level knew I wasn't ready in my own self because I didn't
Yeah.
know myself, and until I felt sure that those were things I wanted to do, I wasn't going to do them.
As you went on that journey to find yourself, what did you find when you began that journey?
That I love new experiences, that I
Hmm.
love people, that people everywhere are people. We're all different, but we're all the same as
Same,
well.
yeah.
And the world is wide and wonderful and beautiful. And, it was a voyage of discovery. And I discovered that I am happy in being independent, that I don't need to follow the path that everybody else, thinks I should follow. I have a wonderful knack for when people suggest or think I should do one thing, I love and tend to do the opposite. And I discovered that, and I got to a place where I found that was okay, and I didn't feel social pressure to,
I think that's a beautiful story, though, that you have. And I'm hoping that those that are listening, especially young women that are listening to this particular interview, you do not have to conform to the image that they are stressing and stamping you with. When you become an outlier and you're stepping out on your own to investigate yourself and investigate the world, you are running against the grain, especially a young woman. You're running against the pack, as they say. And I suggest you girls get out there, you young women, get out there and run against the grain and experience this world, and it will change you, but you will become stronger and more apt at dealing with all of the madness, if you will, because you'll get a chance to see people at many different levels, especially when you're going into cross culture traveling and all these different things. It will open your eyes, and please, for the love of God, become an outlier. Get out there and experience. So here you are. You have been one of those that haven't conformed, and the conformity that they utilize and the language that they use is you weren't normal. Because if you're normal, you'd be obedient to all the crazy stuff. You'd be having the kids and all that type of stuff. So as you are moving through your life and you begin to settle in, if you will, especially where you're at right now, how did you get to where you are? And as you began to navigate your life, how did you land where you're at? And how excited were you when you got there?
Great question. So I continued to work. So I worked as an economist, and then in that work evolved, as I said before, I moved to London. I set up a team of economists here in London. I settled down. I met my lovely husband here in the London area, and had my first child. And it was when I came back from maternity leave, actually with my second child, that my job, lots of things were changing in the landscape, and my job and I just weren't really a good fit anymore. So shortly after that, I came to a crossroads, and I thought, I've got two young children. I can either continue in this job and keep kind of phoning it in. I know what I'm doing. It's quite relaxed. It's not going to stretch or challenge me too much, and I'm not going to move up. It's not going to offer me the career progression that I think I want, but it might be a nice place to spend my kids' young years. And then this other job offer came along, which was the opposite of that. It was a big step up in career progression, but certainly going to be more of a stretch, more of a challenge. And I ended up taking it, and it was really big and scary, because I'd been with my other company for 14 years, and I didn't know if I could do the change. I didn't know if I could manage I didn't know if my skills were transferable. I had a young kid. I didn't know anything about anything anymore, because that just turns your life upside down, doesn't it? But I took it, and it was a wonderful opportunity. It was a hard job, a really hard job. And I was exposed to working with some wonderful people, the vast majority of them wonderful people, but also a couple of really difficult people in that job, which was new for me. I hadn't really dealt with people quite that difficult.
Didn't read the fine print?
Yeah, I should have read the fine print, although I'm pretty sure they didn't publish that in advance. But it stretched me, and I learned so much about myself as well. And I learned how easy it is to be sucked into a dark place when there's darkness around you, and to lose sight of joy and love and laughter. And I'm kind of blending. I had two jobs and a break in between, and across those two jobs and the break in between there were moments of pure lightness and joy and understanding. But there were also some really dark points where I watched myself get sucked into this world at work, where we forget that we're human beings sometimes, and we treat each other in ways that are unkind and unempathetic, all for the sake of pleasing our investors. I discovered I wouldn't change it, because if I hadn't done it, I'd sit here wondering what could have been. Yeah. Could I have made it to the top? Could I have been in the boardroom? And now I know, And where I am now is in recognizing, okay, I've seen that side, and I don't want it for myself. I think it's great for everyone who achieves it, and I hope everyone who achieves it and stays there remembers your empathy and your compassion. But for me, in the environments that I was in, there was too much pressure to conform to the corporate norm, and not enough freedom to stay the sunny, light, open, trusting person that I kind of my authentic self. So maybe the opportunity will come along where that authentic self has the room. And I work with startups, and I work with female founders now, which for me gives me the ultimate best of both worlds, because I am able to influence working environments from a place where I dictate what environments I will work within, and which ones I won't. And that for me is a place of real joy. And I think with the tools that I've amassed over this experience, I can now look at situations and recognize is that a situation where I can bring my authentic self? Or is that a situation where, I'm a quite sensitive soul and easily malleable? That's what I've discovered about myself, which can
Yeah.
be dangerous. If you put me in a dark situation, I have to fight really hard to not slide into that, lean into it and kind of start to emulate those around me. Because we try to fit in, right? That's the way we
Hmm.
fit in. And so I think with the tools that I've amassed throughout this experience, I can now look at those situations and recognize what are going to be positive situations and comfortable and enable us to grow, and what are going to be situations where my authentic self is not going to be welcome because it's it's a condition where the ever present desire to make more money at the expense of people, or the ever present desire to hit a deadline over treat each other with respect. Those
Yeah.
environments are not where I want to spend my time.
Yeah. And I tell people this all the time. There is a purpose to your pain. The pain gives birth to you because of that time, that dark time, you are able to be who you are today. You carry a certain degree of wisdom, knowledge, insight that you had gained from that time. And working with an entrepreneur, working with people in business, both men and women, you can guide them as to how to create their culture, if you will, that we talk about within the business world. I remember when I was there, Katie, that they told me that I had to die. Do you remember the meeting that they brought me in and they said, Primus, your problem is you have a heart and you need to kill that. And I looked at them and I remember standing up and watching the group of men that were before me in this hall, in this meeting. And we were all in our suits and I'm looking at them and I said to myself, these men are dead. And I began to look at their eyes for the first time. And you know who they are. You watch them and you see it. And there is no one there. I can tell you exactly how their faces look, how their eyes look, the absent of the pupil, all of those things I can look. And I looked at these guys, and for the first time, I said to myself, I'm amongst lions. And I remember this young man, and they looked at me and said, you can get to where we are today, but you will have to die to get here. And I looked at them and I said, I don't know how to do that. And I resigned. I remember coming out of that arena, I took off all the semblance that reminded me of that place, the corporate America. I took off the watches. I took off the suits, anything that reminded me of that time. I took it off, and it was about 10 or 15 years later. I was walking somewhere in Colorado and I saw this beautiful timepiece that this man makes, certain watches, but he makmakes certain, and I just fell in love with that. And that's the first time I put a watch on in like 10 years because to me, it was art. Had nothing to do with the corporate scene, but I know exactly what you're talking about and the degree of sacrifice that they are placing on an individual, especially those like us that are sensitive spirit, where you are going against everything that you are in order to make that happen. And there are many of you that are listening to this conversation that you're right there. We have both been there. We know what is being done, but my suggestion to you is to go inwards, go in and begin to excavate you and begin to look at what you're in and where you're at and ask those deep questions. Talk to us about that time because it is important. As I said, there are many of us who are there, probably still there, some of them. Some of them have chosen to be there, but there's some of them that, like you and I, are in pain and trying to figure out what to do. Talk to Katie, talk to her. Now, where you're at, talk to her, that individual. What would you say?
Well, I think there's two big things. One, Brene Brown talks about how the different ways in which we numb ourselves in order to cope with these environments. And one that she talks about really stood out to me, which is crazy busy. So we just get so busy that we don't have time to process any of this. And I think, as an executive with young children, traveling a ton, it's very easy to land in that space. And I think that's where I went to so that I didn't feel it when, someone called me names at work or accused me of not being committed enough or not being professional enough or not doing, it's never not a good enough job. That's the bit that
Yeah.
bothers me. It's never your work was lackluster for this, that, or the other reason. Here's how we can improve. I found that the closer I got and the more I was in the boardroom, the more it was, you're not good enough,
Mm-hmm.
not the work isn't good enough. And I think that is a scary transformation in the way that we talk to each other. And it's a very big deal and a very small difference in language. So if I go back and talk to myself and people that I've worked with and people that may be sitting in the situation today, I wish I could go back and say, you know what, stand up for what you know is the right way to have the conversation. I have a bad habit of reacting. If someone comes at me full force, I tend to protect myself and react. And I think recognizing that, to your point, that when someone is coming at you with a personal attack, I don't think there's ever a place for personal attack in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine a situation where that would be appropriate, but it happens all the
All
time.
the time.
And so when that happens, being able to recognize and say, hang on, you're attacking me as a person, not my work. And to be able to separate those two things and recognize that is coming from a place where the person attacking you very likely is injured in some way,
Mm-hmm.
or is reflecting and acting in the way they have been modeled, the way that people expect them to act, or is at a point where they don't know what else to do. They are under so much pressure and they don't know how else to get a result. And this is all they've been modeled. But the other thing that I think is fundamental to it, so recognize that and then try to understand that and separate it from what it means and how that person is acting. But also recognize that it tends to come from a place that is built on the assumption that we are in an environment of scarcity or in a zero-sum game. Because people fight when they think that the resources are scarce, right? If we believe a rising tide lifts all boats, there's no reason to fight. But we fight when we feel threatened, when we feel that for you to win, I have to lose. And I find, and particularly, I think women struggle with this, understandably so, because I think it's quite common for women to look at the top and go, there's only one woman on the board.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to be the woman on the board, it can't be my colleague over there who's also a woman.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. I wish I had a better solution. That's a perfectly logical conclusion, but we do ourselves a disservice because the minute we try to hold other people down in order to get ourselves ahead, we will fail. I mean, we might succeed in the short term, but we're certainly not going to succeed in improving the state of the business or the state of ourselves as people.
Yeah. In the short term is always what happens, but in the long run, it always fails. And one of the things I would tell and suggest to people is you have a core belief. There's a coreness about you. And when you violate that coreness, that's when problem starts. That's why I say to them, go inside to see and look. Boundaries become important. Understanding, reading the room, as you mentioned, and learning how to separate the attack and so forth. And that's valuable advice. So here you are, you went through that dark period of time and you navigated to your current place. How did that transition came where you ended up where you are at today?
The first was the realization that I don't want the life that everybody thinks I should want, which is to be the next, on this, I've been on a couple of senior leadership teams as chief product officer, and the natural next step is, well, how do you get from there to CEO, and how do you get from there to the board, and how do you get to the, and so you either take a chief product officer role at a bigger company or you move into a more senior. And I've realized that the day-to-day of that, it did not appeal to me.
Mm-hmm.
What was fascinating was I could say that out loud in plain terms 100 times to the other senior leaders and our investors, and they never believed me. The recruiters still don't. They still call and say, "We've got this great job you're going to love," and it's become a joke. With some of my more colleagues with whom I have personal relationships. I have one colleague who loves to tease me. He's like, "Oh, you can't help yourself. You'll be back around at some point." And who knows? Maybe I will. I never say never, but it's fascinating, and it made me realize how brainwashed everyone is. to assume that I want to be a chief product officer at a bigger company or a CEO or, something bigger than what I am today. And what I've found is that I don't. I love what I want is freedom. I choose how I spend my time. I don't want other people putting meetings in my diary. I don't want other people booking plane tickets for me and saying, you're going to be here on this date. You're going to go there then, and you're going to do this, and you're going to deliver that. I want freedom. And I did not find it inside the leadership teams within which I worked. That's just not how that works in most circumstances. So the beautiful day for me now is having time for myself to enjoy my community where I live. I'm doing more volunteering. I mentioned I'm working with female-founded businesses, so startups, and I'm connecting people. I work with all the recruiters, and I'm helping put other people in roles that hopefully will fit them. And for me, with that freedom has come peace, of just enjoying day to day. I don't need to prove anything to anyone else anymore. I don't need anybody else's stamp, of well done to feel valid. I can get that just by the fact that the sun is streaming through the window today. I had a good walk with the dog. I had a great volunteering session yesterday. Those things are not going to land me 20,000 followers. They're not going to result in adulation or me being up on stage and hands clapping. But gosh darn it, it was a beautiful day.
But your genesis that made you who you are and caused you to be that way started when you were an outlier. And so that's why I invite all the young women, get out there and become that, because you will see that you don't need to be a part of the system. And here's someone who just proved to us all from our conversation that you don't need to be a part of that system that they have in order to be successful. An author. Now you're an author. How did you gravitate? How did you give birth to that? How did it come in? What did you see that you felt that needed to be put in the format that you did? And when you give birth to it, how did that process went through?
Well, it started as catharsis. It was genuinely working through the pain of these projects and working on software projects that had devolved, and because they were so late, and because they were so over budget, and because things had gone wrong, we ended up in these situations where people weren't interacting in a way that was positive or healthy or good for our emotional well-being. And so I took a long break after one project that was particularly difficult, and I started writing essays, trying to figure out why did we get where did we go so wrong, and why did it end up so dark? And one of the things I found is that quite often it's the mismatch between the way we were trying to accomplish things and the what we were trying to accomplish. In writing about that, I could see how everyone was trying their hardest, but we just weren't working well together. And it became very, very clear. There are some very distinct reasons why we weren't working well together, but it became very, very clear that this is quite common. We're focused so much on the process of how we're going to do something and exactly what the project is going to deliver that we forget that it's individuals that are going to make it happen. Building software is a human enterprise. Humans decide what the software will do, how to code it, and quite often these days still write the code. So you have to appreciate the human element of what you're trying to do and understand that your language matters and understand the distinct circumstances within which you're operating. So, again, the book was all me working through what was going on. And then as I worked that through and realized, there's some fundamental differences here, applying those and thinking about it in a different way and finding better ways to accomplish positive and efficient software development.
Let me ask you this question since we're getting close to the end. You have a mic and you are given the opportunity to speak to all of us on this planet. And it is March 5th and you're plugged in and we're all waiting for you. What would you say to us as a collective?
Remember that the connection between us as people is the most important thing. Paying the bills, the financial stress that so many families have is real, and I totally understand that. And I sympathize with everyone who's on a treadmill just trying to, keep that ticking over. But so often I find the people that forget are the people with the greatest wealth. And so particularly to those, people for whom it's not the day-to-day struggle just to pay the bills, it's important that you, as well as everyone else, remember that the most important thing we do every day is connect with each other as people. And the least important thing that we do when we already have enough wealth is generate more.
There's nothing else to say. I want to tell you guys something. Many of you are young, starting entrepreneurs and so forth, and you're looking at, or you may have an idea of a business and you're thinking as to what to do, some small companies and whatever that you have, because all of us, I believe, have the capability, and it should be that we all, to some degree, become entrepreneurs in our gift that we have residing with us. I have an individual in front of me that has some insights about all of those different things and how to utilize your ability that you have. She has knowledge, wisdom, insights to how to deal with some of those corporate things and culture that we've dealt with. And I want to make her available to you. We're going to put all of her links together, get the book. You know how I feel about books. I keep telling people, form little clubs with your friends, buy a book, come together, read the books, and then come and talk about it. What did you learn? How can you do this? And as you implement those type processes, those groups, you would be amazed at the outcome that will happen amongst you personally, business-wise, all of it. Become proactive in this life that we have. It's only once, and become effective and change the world, guys. We have a world to change. We have an individual that is here, and I want to make her accessible to all of you. Thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute delight speaking with you.
It's been good. I loved your life and how you created you from a young individual being that outlier, and how it has made such an imprint in your being. And I truly wish the young women that are listening, are the women, doesn't matter your age, become an outlier. Release yourself from the demands of the programmers and show them that you're much more than they are telling you that you are, and prove it to you and prove it to the world. Again, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
I love you.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.